You feel the heat in your arm before you see the cut. Your skin is open. Blood is running down your wrist. There is no hospital, no pharmacy, no antiseptic bottle, no doctor waiting behind a clean white door. For most of human history, this was not an emergency scene from a survival movie. This was Tuesday. A thorn tore your skin while you gathered roots. A flint edge sliced your thumb while you shaped a tool. A hunting spear slipped. A child fell against a stone. A tooth cracked on hard food. A fever came in the night. So how did your ancestors survive without doctors? The strange answer is that they did not survive by replacing doctors with one magic plant, one secret ritual, or one prehistoric cure. They survived by turning the whole group into medicine. Before there were clinics, there was attention. Before there were prescriptions, there was memory. Before there were specialists, there were people who had seen the same wound, the same fever, the same swollen joint, and remembered what happened next. Your first doctor was not a person. It was your body. The moment your skin opened, blood began to clot. Clotting means the blood thickened and sealed the break, like wet clay drying over a crack. White blood cells moved toward the injury, searching for invading bacteria. Swelling began because more fluid and immune cells were being sent into the damaged area. That swelling would have hurt, but pain had a job. Pain forced you to protect the wound, slow down, and pay attention before the damage became worse. For your ancestors, pain was also information. But your body could not do everything alone. A deep cut could rot. A broken leg could end your ability to follow the group. A bad tooth could make eating impossible. A fever could pull you toward death in one night. So survival began before anyone got sick. Your ancestors lived inside an environment that punished carelessness immediately. You could not drink any water you found and assume your stomach would forgive you. You could not eat unknown berries because they looked sweet. You could not ignore a small wound forever and expect the world to stay kind. The first form of medicine was prevention. Not prevention written on a poster. Prevention learned by fear. Your group remembered which waterholes made people vomit. They remembered which plants burned the mouth, which leaves cooled irritated skin, which smoke drove insects away, and which wounds became dangerous if they were sealed too quickly with dirt still inside. This knowledge was not laboratory science, but it was observation repeated across generations. And repeated observation is how medicine begins. At El Cedrón Cave in northern Spain, researchers studying Neanderthal dental calculus found evidence that changes the picture of ancient health. Dental calculus is hardened plaque on teeth, the crusty material that traps tiny chemical traces of food and plant. Karen Hardy and her colleagues reported compounds linked to yarrow and chamomile in Neanderthal remains. These plants are bitter, and not especially useful as calories, which makes their presence interesting. Why chew a bitter plant if it does not fill your stomach? One possibility is that it helped with discomfort, digestion, or inflammation. The evidence does not prove a neat little medicine cabinet. It does suggest something more human. Your relatives noticed that some plants did things to the body. That is the beginning of a pharmacy. Not shelves. A landscape. For an ancient person, medicine could be growing underfoot. Bark, resin, leaves, roots, clay, fat, ash, honey, and smoke all had possible uses in different places and times. Some helped cover wounds. Some dried wet skin. Some soothed pain. Some were dangerous if used wrongly. The difference between medicine and poison was often dose, timing, and memory. Who remembered? Often, the old did. In a small foraging group, an elder was not just an extra mouth to feed. An elder was a walking archive. A grandmother who survived 20 winters knew which coughs passed, which coughs killed, and which child needed to be kept warm through the night. An older hunter knew how a sprained ankle looked on the first day, the third day, and the 10th. This mattered because most treatment was not dramatic. Most treatment was boring. Rest, warmth, food, water, cleaning, watching, waiting. That sounds simple until you imagine doing it without spare time, without stored medicine, and without a soft bed in a sealed room. If you were injured, someone else had to bring food. Someone else had to carry wood. Someone else had to help you move. That is where ancient medicine becomes social. One of the most famous examples comes from Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq. In the 1950s, archaeologist Ralph Selecki excavated Neanderthal skeletons there, including the individual known as Shanidar I. This Neanderthal had severe injuries and disabilities. Modern descriptions note damage including a withered arm, impaired vision on one side, and signs of healed trauma. Yet Shanidar I lived for decades, perhaps into his late 30s or 40s. That age may not sound old to you, but in a dangerous Ice Age world, with serious injuries, it means something. Healed bones are a kind of message from the past. They say the person did not die immediately. They say time passed. They say the body repaired itself. And when the injuries were severe enough to make independent survival difficult, they suggest that others helped. The important word is suggest. Archaeology is careful because bones do not speak in full sentences. You cannot watch someone hand Shanidar one food. But the injuries healed, and he lived. That makes care a serious possibility, not a sentimental fantasy. Your ancestors may not have had doctors, but they had each other. At the Atapuerca sites in Spain, especially Cima de los Huesos, researchers including Juan Luis Arzuaga and his colleagues found ancient human fossils that also complicate the myth of pure brutality. One skull, often called Benjamina, belonged to a child with craniosynostosis, meaning some skull bones fused too early. A child with a serious condition survived for years. The bones cannot tell the whole story, but they show that ancient human life was not only competition, it was also care. This is where the modern myth begins to crack. You may imagine prehistoric life as a brutal contest where only the strongest survived and the weak were abandoned. But human survival never worked that simply. A group that protects knowledge, children, injured adults, and elders becomes stronger than a group that throws everyone away the moment they become inconvenient. Compassion was not separate from survival. Compassion was survival technology. When someone was injured, the group had decisions to make. Could the camp stay in place? Could meat be shared? Could a sling be made from hide? Could a broken limb be held still with wood and fiber? Could a feverish person be placed near the fire, away from wind, with someone awake enough to notice if breathing changed? None of this required a hospital. All of it required attention. The same pattern appears again and again. In ancient remains, researchers find healed fractures, worn teeth, arthritis, infections that lasted long enough to mark bone, and injuries that did not kill instantly. Each healed injury is evidence that the body had time. Time is medicine. Food gives time. Shelter gives time. Protection gives time. Other people give time. But your ancestors also had tools for the body. Fire was one of the greatest. Fire warmed the sick. Fire made food softer for children, elders, and people with bad teeth. Fire produced smoke, which could repel insects and dry meat. Fire also created ash and charcoal, materials that many human cultures later used for cleaning, drying, and absorbing moisture. Cooking itself was a medical revolution. A roasted tuber is easier to chew than a raw one. Cooked meat is easier to digest than tough raw flesh. Soft food can keep an injured person alive when chewing hurts. A child with weak teeth, an elder with worn molars, or a sick adult with little appetite could still take in energy. Medicine was not just what you put on a wound. Medicine was anything that kept the body alive long enough to recover. Food was medicine. Warmth was medicine. Sleep was medicine. Clean water was medicine. And knowledge of danger was medicine. Your ancestors also learned from animals. Chimpanzees and other animals have been observed using certain plants in ways that may help with parasites or illness. Michael Huffman, a primatologist who studied animal self-medication, helped show that this behavior is not uniquely human. Self-medication means an animal uses something from the environment in a way that may reduce sickness or discomfort. For humans, this ability became much bigger because humans could teach. A chimp can learn from experience. A human can turn experience into a story. Do not eat that root. Chew this leaf. Keep that wound clean. Do not sleep in that damp place. Move the child closer to the fire. The story becomes a treatment. The treatment becomes tradition. The tradition becomes culture. But not every ancient treatment worked. Some were useless. Some were harmful. Some were mixed with beliefs you might call spiritual today. If someone survived after a chant, a plant, and a night by the fire, which part saved them? The plant? The warmth? The rest? The immune system? Luck? Ancient people could not always separate those things. Modern people still struggle with this. The difference is that your ancestors lived under constant testing. If a practice failed again and again, people noticed. If a plant made vomiting worse, people remembered. If a way of cleaning a wound helped often enough, it spread. This was trial and error, with life as the price. By the time of Otzi the Iceman, more than 5,000 years ago, you can see another layer of ancient health knowledge. Otzi was found preserved in the Alps in 1991, with clothing, tools, and an unusually detailed record of his body. Researchers including Albert Zink have discussed his health problems, including joint issues and other conditions. His tattoos are clustered in places that may connect to pain or treatment, though scholars debate exactly what they meant. The point is not that Otzi had modern medicine. He did not. The point is that his body shows attention to pain, stress, injury, and treatment long before hospitals existed. Your ancestors were not helpless because they lacked doctors. They were vulnerable, but not helpless. Their medicine was distributed. Part of it lived in the immune system. Part of it lived in plants. Part of it lived in fire. Part of it lived in tools. Part of it lived in elders. Part of it lived in the willingness of other people to lose sleep for you. That is the counterintuitive twist. The first healthcare system was not a building. It was a relationship. A modern doctor is powerful because training is concentrated in one person and supported by a giant system of labs, drugs, machines, and records. Ancient care was different. It was spread across the camp. One person knew plants. One person knew bones. One person knew births. One person knew when a fever was turning bad. One person had the patience to sit beside the injured through the dark. No one had everything. Together, they had enough. Not always. Many people died from infections that would be easy to treat now. Many infants did not survive. Tooth infections, childbirth complications, parasites, infected wounds, and respiratory illness could all kill quickly. Ancient medicine was not romantic. It was desperate, practical, observant, and uneven. But it was real. And it left traces in teeth, bones, tools, plants, and the long survival of injured people who should have died quickly if no one cared. So when you imagine life without doctors, do not imagine no care. Imagine care without walls. A campfire instead of a clinic. An elder's memory instead of a textbook. A bitter leaf instead of a pill bottle. A cleaned wound instead of a sterile bandage. A whole group quietly deciding that your life is worth the effort. That decision shaped human evolution as much as hunting did. Because the human body is fragile. Your skin tears easily. Your teeth crack. Your joints swell. Your children are helpless for years. Your brain needs teaching before it becomes useful. Alone, you are not the strongest animal. Together, you become something stranger. You become a species that survives by noticing pain in another body. You become a species that remembers what helped. You become a species that turns care into culture. And the next time you clean a cut, rest a fever, bring soup to someone sick, or stay awake because another person is breathing badly in the next room, you are not stepping away from ancient life. You are continuing it. You feel the heat in your arm before you see the cut. But now, the first thing that reaches for you is not a doctor. It is the oldest medicine your ancestors ever had. Another human being.